Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be answering the question, should you practice with your eyes closed? Now, we're going to talk about the reasons why it might be beneficial to practice with your eyes closed, and then we're also going to talk about reasons that it might not be as beneficial. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, this is somewhat of a subjective question. Some people will find that it might be helpful to them to practice with their eyes closed, and then some people might feel that it's not as helpful. So in today's video, instead of giving you a cut and dry black or white answer, yes or no, we're going to talk about the pros and cons for each and how it may be more helpful for certain people than other people. So let's go ahead and start by just talking about the reasons why it might not be as helpful. I know for a lot of my students, or for instance for myself when I was younger as a student, I was a really good memorizer, and partly that was because I was such a poor note reader. So a lot of my students are the same way. They work really hard to figure out a piece, learn the notes, and then they just memorize it. So they don't really look at the music, they mainly just look at their hands. And for someone like this, it actually might not be very beneficial to practice with your eyes closed, because that's a really big issue to not be a fluent note reader. It could be beneficial to keep them from looking at their hands, for instance, but overall it might not really be that beneficial. Another reason why it might not be beneficial to practice with your eyes closed is that if you're practicing something with a lot of really big leaps, or that when the hands are moving a lot around the keyboard, it might just be a frustrating process. And so you might not really find that it's that beneficial, you just get frustrated, and so in that regard, it really won't be as effective. Now let's go ahead and talk about a few reasons why practicing with your eyes closed might be really beneficial to you. The first reason, like I already kind of alluded to, is that if you struggle with looking at your hands a lot and you have a problem with that, it might be really beneficial in that it forces you to not look at your hands, to actually trust your arms and your muscles that probably can play better without you looking than you necessarily realize. And this goes into the second reason, and that is that it can help your kinesthetic awareness of technique. So a lot of times when you become more of an advanced pianist, teachers say things like, oh, this passage should feel like this, or this arpeggio should feel like this, or this motion you're going to use in your arm should feel like this. And for a lot of students, that can be really hard to sort of get that into their minds, because we're so used to just looking at the hands and working the fingers. And so in that regard, developing that kinesthetic awareness of what an arpeggio feels like to play without thinking about the notes, without even looking, just playing it, can be really, really helpful. As well as, of course, developing technique and focusing more on the way it should feel rather than the way it should look. And this is a really important element of developing technique. Another reason, which is very closely related to the previous reason, is that it can help you understand and learn the topography of the keyboard so that you're more comfortable without looking at your hands. Now, the best sight readers in the world will tell you that the most important thing to do is to not look at your hands. I was just recently watching a video where this pianist they weren't sight reading, but they were reading through a piece, and the entire time, and this is not an easy piece, by the way, they were looking straight at the music stand. They did not look at their hands even once, even though they were moving around the keyboard. And this, I think, goes back to kind of reinforcing that point that not looking at your hands is actually really beneficial for musicality. It's really beneficial for knowing what's coming next. Even if you have the piece generally memorized, you're not going to have it 100% memorized necessarily. And so if you kind of forget what comes next or something, then you don't really need to look at your hands. And so in that sense, it can be really beneficial. So you can see that depending on what your strengths or weaknesses are, it may or may not be that helpful to practice with your eyes closed. For people who are really, really solid note readers and they don't have a problem with looking at their hands, then practicing with your eyes closed may or may not be particularly helpful to them. However, someone who just always have their eyes glued to their hands, this can be a really good way to practice and learn to trust their muscle memory and learn the keyboard topography a lot better. This will help them to be better note readers because they won't feel like they have to look at their hands constantly. And it will also help them again, gain a kinesthetic awareness of what it feels like to play something rather than always looking and sort of placing fingers and then playing the notes. So I'm going to let you all draw your own conclusions. I find that it's helpful for me to practice with my eyes closed at times. But like I said, it may not be helpful to you, so give it a try, see what you think. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any requests for future videos, make sure and put those in the comments down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.